o'clock. We are keen to ensure that we kick off on time. We have a lot to cover today. I'm absolutely delighted to be chairing this webinar and introducing Dr. Will Thalheimer. So good afternoon, my name is Nadia Khan. I'm Head of Learning Community and Customer Voice for Emerald Works. This will be an interactive session and there will be an opportunity for questions and of course for you to chat to each other. I've already seen a very active chat, so please familiarise yourself with the controls. Please remember to click everyone so we can see your name and comment. And if at any point you have any technical difficulties, please pop a comment into our question and answer. So I would like to welcome you all to the Emerald Works Experts webinar series, in which we bring you global learning experts challenging the status quo and pushing boundaries on how we learn. Bringing together diverse views from multiple sources is at the heart of our evidence-led approach. At Emerald Works, our learning solutions are here to help you boost the performance of your people and your organisation. Our Mind Tools online resources are proven to improve employee performance through real-time, easy-to-access workplace tools that support personal effectiveness in all areas of leadership and management, when, where, and how you may need it. On today's expert webinar, it's an absolute pleasure to welcome Dr. Will Thalheimer. For over a decade, a master presenter and learning researcher, Will has taught people how to present well. He's an expert in taking scientific findings and translating them into practical recommendations to help learning professionals create effective learning interventions. Will is a consultant focused on research-based practices for learning design, learning evaluation, and presentation design. Will has a PhD in learning and cognition from Columbia University and an MBA on information systems and instructional design. And he is the founder of the Debunker Club, a worldwide group of learning professionals dedicated to getting rid of learning myths. So in this webinar, Will show you how to use design elements to help your presentations hit home. His unique presentation science approach is based on the insight that audience members are learners. Armed with this knowledge, he encourages learning professionals to present with the science of learning wisdom to increase engagement, learning, memory, and action. Without further ado, I'm delighted to hand over to the extraordinary Will Thalheimer. Thank you, Will.
Well, thank you, Nadia. That's very nice. And before I get started, I want to thank Emerald Works for inviting me here. I want to thank Nadia and Carlin and Andy for help organizing this. There's a lot of stuff, a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes. And also want to point out, for those of you who don't know, that Emerald Works is behind one of my favorite podcasts, the Good Practice Podcast. So I highly recommend that. And I'm delighted to be with you here today. So let's see if we can get started. Okay, so this is, the title of this is The Art and Science of Effective Learning Presentations Online or On-Site. And I want to make a little comment before we begin. And that is that, you know, all of us, most of us, many of us are being now pushed into moving online. Now, we were moving before the pandemic, we were moving to a place where we were going to have to teach online. But now the pandemic is forcing us, all of us, to think about how to present online, how to train online, how to utilize that. This may be a hybrid coming sometime in the future where we're doing stuff in the classroom and online, but really one of my central messages today is it doesn't matter where you're presenting or how you're presenting, but in some sense, we really have to go at this from the fundamentals of human learning. Andy, I noticed that maybe you want to make me the highlighted presenter. Not a big deal, but people may see me in a little box. All right, so let's move forward here. By the way, I'm gonna introduce myself a little bit in a minute, so you know where I'm coming from. You know my sweet spots and blind spots. But I want to get us started with a question. So this is Joe. You can see Joe is presenting. I like this double exposure. It's Manhattan, but it looks like he's presenting to the world. And So that's going to be a lot of fun. Now, this is Joe. Here's the situation. Joe makes an amazing presentation. People clap enthusiastically at the end, and they each have several practical goals for improvements they can make in their work. How would you rate the outcome of Joe's efforts? Okay, I'm going to let you read that. Then I'm going to give you some answer choices. Then I'm going to give you a poll question you can actually answer. So your answer choice is this: Joe did a good job. Joe, at a minimum, did a reasonable job. Joe clearly did not do enough to be successful. Or D, another answer would be better here. Now, I put that D in there. Could get rid of it, but it kind of makes it more interesting. Makes you think a little bit more deeply about this question, thinking more broadly. So, Andy, can we have that poll? Are we ready to go there? I can see people don't need the poll. They're just putting it in the chat. But if we have that poll, that would be great. And by the way, folks, you need to give us a little leniency today. This is the first time that this new implementation of WebEx we're using. So we may not have all the technical things in order. So forget, here's the poll. All right. So thank you for answering in chat. And if you could double your answer. Okay, and Andy, when you see people slowing down, you can give us the, you can show us the results of that. Okay, and can you share the results? I tell you, everybody, but I can't see the results either. But I did make my vote. Oh, I shouldn't say vote. For those of us in the United States, it's a very stressful time. Okay. So let's forget the polling for now. Oh, there we go. Awesome. Thank you. All right. One of the things about these online technologies is the first time you use them, it's not going to go like you want it to, but that's cool. So it looks like the most popular answer is D. But a lot of people thought Joe did a good job, or a minimum did a reasonably good job. All right. So here's some questions, and we can get rid of that poll. That would be great. Here's some questions we might ask ourselves about this. Was the content good? Was it valid, ethical, and usable? Will the audience know how to implement it? They seem to like the presentation. They clapped at the end, but will they know actually what to do? Will the audience know what to do to overcome obstacles? Right? We all face obstacles when we're in our workplace. We know, are they prepared for that? Will the audience remember what they learned? Did they learn it fully, or did they only think they did? And does Joe give the audience any job aids to support follow-through? There's lots of things that we could be thinking about. But just because we get a good result, a seemingly good result, get applause at the end, doesn't mean that things are as effective as we want them to be. All right, so question for you. What problems have you seen in presentations or trainings in 5 words or less? And let's not just put it on other people. We've all been in presentations that are bad or trainings that are bad, but we could also ask it this way. What problems have you caused in presentations or trainings? And again, if you could do that in 5 words or less, that would be great. Let me, as you're writing in there, let me tell you my history. I've been in the field a long time. I once was a leadership trainer, and I wasn't completely new at it, but I was pretty inexperienced. And I worked for this company, about 150 people, and the CEO sent this email around to the senior staff, the senior managers of the company. And he inadvertently included me in this email. And what he said was, Thalheimer's just not that good at presenting. I don't really want him out there doing too much of this for us. And that was kind of painful. Another time I was leading a 3-day workshop. And the morning of the second day, my client contact comes to me and says, Will, it's just not working out. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, the participants have told me they don't feel they're getting value out of the program. And what I'd like to do, Will, is to poll them and see if they want to go further with this or stop now. Another painful thing. About 3 or 4 years ago, I was giving a presentation in a conference, and I decided to speak on something that I wasn't, super expert on, and I tried to do it in a different way, and it didn't really work. It fell flat. I knew that when I was doing it, and I couldn't rescue it. And in the evaluation form, one guy said, I don't know if it was a guy, but this person said, this was just terrible. You should never invite this person back to speak again. So, okay, so I'm seeing dull and flat tone and pace, distracted, being disorganized, not practical, too much information. I saw bullet points before. Okay, so you guys have seen lots of issues. Great. Today, I'm going to give you some ideas on how to solve some of these issues. I'm probably not going to solve them all. There's so much to being a good presenter. There's many approaches to presentation. I'm not going to pretend to know them all. Many different ways of looking at this. What I do is to take a science of learning approach. This is my background. This is my skill set. And it occurred to me a couple of years ago that when we present, we are really trying to reach an audience. So, whether we are doing a training presentation where it's obvious that our audience members are learners, or we're a manager making a debrief, or we're a project team leader leading a team in a presentation. In every case, we want people to comprehend our message. That's about learning. We want people to remember it so it has some impact later. We want people to also walk away and to be able to take actions. All those things are about learning. So my belief is that when we make presentations, we ought to look from the science of learning and cognition approach. So it's really about the audience. And it's really about these 4 things. Number 1, we need to make sure that we help our audience members to engage, but that's not enough, right? If they engage and that's all they do, we're just being entertainers. We have to do more. We also have to support our audiences to help them to learn, but that's not even enough. We also want them to be able to remember and to be able to act when they go back to their workplace, to their performance situation. The nice acronym for this is LRA, LRA. We could all use a good strong chant these days. This is sort of the organization of the Presentation Science Bootcamp, which I'm drawing a lot of this stuff from. Today, I'm going to focus mostly on the engagement side, a little bit on the learning side. Obviously, in a short presentation, we can't go into all these things. So let me introduce myself so you know where I am coming from. Work Learning Research is my consulting practice, research and consulting practice. And it may look like a 10,000 person consultancy, but really it's basically me. Over the years, I've had amazing clients. This is just some of the larger folks. The US Navy SEALs, Oxfam, the anti-poverty folks, the National Park Service, the World Bank, the CDC, and many, many others. Not only these big organizations, but also small little e-learning shops, et cetera. And I've learned so much from my clients. Also, I've spent many years looking at over 200 articles from the scientific referee journals on learning, memory, and instruction, and research, translating that research into practical recommendations, and sharing that research on the Work Learning Research catalog. By the way, we're going to send you the slides so you don't feel you need to screenshot all these things. One of the research reports that came out this year, I wanted to highlight factors that support training transfer, a brief synopsis of the transfer research. You may know me as an evaluation guy. Don't buy this book, by the way, right now. I'm working on the 2nd edition. It should be out in a couple of months. You may know me as the author of the LTEM model, the replacement for the Kirkpatrick Cassell 4-level model. Working on a new book now, The CEO's Guide to Training, E-Learning, and Work, Reshaping Learning into a Competitive Advantage. This summer, Matt Richter and I stood up a conference, 6-week conference, the L&D conference, and people liked it so much that they said, hey, you have to continue this community. So we are creating the L&D Accelerator, a membership community. So stay in touch to learn more about that. My goals for this session are these. I'm going to help you get rid of your bullet points. Utilize the iPath phenomenon, how to use screen geography to guide attention, and key insights for presenting online. You know, the overall thing we all ought to remember is we really want to move people from the learning situation to the work situation. And we need to do that by not just lecturing, not just presenting information, not just thinking about content, but going beyond that. Okay. PowerPoint poisoning. What does PowerPoint do wrong in the chat? What do you think? Try to do too much, fancy animation, bullet points, boring, death by PowerPoint. You guys are going too fast for me, too much on one slide. Distracting, nothing's wrong with PowerPoint. PowerPoint is fine, it's what we choose to put into it. Too wordy, flat, okay, awesome. Yeah, I'm not anti-PowerPoint. I want to say that right from the start. PowerPoint's a tool. It's a powerful tool. Particularly the Office 365 version is amazing. I use it in all my work. I really love it. Now, it does do some things. It pushes us in some directions that aren't so good. So, for example, one thing it does is encourages us to use bullet points, and it encourages us to use slide templates. As you're going to see, those things might not be the best that we should be doing. All right, so first thing, we're going to look at bullet points. Now, bullet points, you know, we have all been in presentations. We've all seen millions, I don't know, millions. Well, we've seen a lot of bullet points over the years. And sometimes they get associated with boredom as somebody goes drones on one after the other. Sometimes, you know, we sort of habituate to great stuff. And if you see something over time, that's not great. And then it's painful. We've all been in bad presentations. So sometimes we associate PowerPoint bullet points with boredom and pain. So that's a problem. If we start with those bullet points, we're going to lose people already. So how can we get rid of these bullet points? One thing we can do is to turn our bullet points into objects. So this is a summary slide I've used before. I'm not going to go through it as I normally would, but you can see that these items here, these could be a list of bullet points, but they do not feel like bullet points. Here's another one. I'm just going to let you read through this. Yeah, Nicola. Notice I'm not reading these. Okay, so these could be bulleted, but they don't feel like bullet points. They don't look like bullet points. I gave you this earlier. I could have put this in bullet points. Oh, boring. All right, now that's one thing we can do, turn our bullet points into objects. Here's a second thing we can do. I've taught about gamification in the past, and one thing I do is I give people this slide. And I could go through each of these, right? But that would kill my audience. So what I do is I say, okay, I want you to look at the things on the left. I want you to look at the things on the right. Which side do you think, the left side or the right side, are more powerful in terms of having good effects through gamification? So what I've done there is I have the audience process the bullet points, not me, and that's much better. Another thing I can do is what I call sliding my bullet, or sliding my bullet points. So let's say this was a slide and I wanted to talk about where this book, where this learning approach or evaluation approach was used. I wanted to get rid of these bullet points, which I do. I could create a separate slide for each of these. So instead of having this one slide, or in addition to having this one slide, I could have things on separate slides. I call that sliding my bullet points. All right, so bullet points, simple solution. We can turn our bullet points into objects. We can have our audience review a list. We can slide our bullets. All right, so the next of the three foundations, the I-path phenomena. This is amazing. So when we have our audience in front of us, their eyes are always scanning. This can be in the classroom, it can be online, it's everywhere. You are doing this all the time. You're doing this right now. You don't even know you're doing it, but you're making these eye fixations. It sort of works like this. This is one person looking at a Google search page, and this is their first eye fixation. This is their second one. This is their third one, their fourth one, fifth, all around here. Now, you might think this takes like 25 seconds. No, this probably takes less than 5 seconds. You noticed a couple things about this. They tend to be focusing on headers. They tend to be focusing on the edge. They tend not to be making eye fixations in the white space, but on the edge of the white space. Here's another one. Focusing on objects, on certain things, and not focusing on the white space. It's almost like the white space makes the objects pop out. Here's somebody reading a book. The green eye fixations are when they first look at this page. Now think about your PowerPoint slides. You present a PowerPoint slide, the first thing somebody might do is to scan the whole thing and only later get down to the content. There's a different kind of technique called a heat map. Notice people are looking at certain aspects of it. They're not fixating that much in the white space. Notice here, even something along the bottom, right? Something not as important is drawing attention. So what does this mean from a design standpoint when we're designing our slides? Well, first, let's realize there's more than one way to present. Whether we're in a classroom, we can teach online, we can record ourselves to have that be part of our presentation. We can present in small groups as well. No matter which of these methods we use, the fundamentals of learning are relevant, and this I-path phenomenon is relevant. So this is our person. This person could be paying to the back of people's heads, paying attention to the back of people's heads, to the instructor. But in some sense, we have some content. We want them to pay attention in a way that supports their learning. So we're going to go into this I-path thing, but first I want to look at logos and templates. This is a template. I got this from PowerPoint. I don't know if they still provide this one, but I got it. And we can add some content to it. Our title slide, whoops. Our title slide, I got a trigger finger here. And, right, we can do that. Looks good. Notice, though, that Steve Jobs, one of the great business presenters, did not use templates. And, you know, what does this mean? Well, that's one way to think about this is there's only so much usable space here. And on this slide, it's about 58%. And so what that means is that the rest of the slide is not used. It doesn't give us room for white space to help our objects pop out. It also can draw people's attention. So it's sort of doubly bad. You ever go to a movie and you see the template that they use? No. Do they use a logo on the bottom of every screen? No. Why not? Well, they want people to have an immersive experience. They don't want people to be distracted away from the central stuff. Logos, templates, they do that. How much usable screen geography, slide geography do we have here? Like 79%. So 21% is wasted. And not only is it wasted, but it causes problems as well. All right. What improvements would you make to this PowerPoint slide? What would you do to improve this? Get rid of the blue edges. You don't like my blue edges? Okay. Lose the labels. Put the labels above the bars. Add a legend. I think we have a legend. Okay. All right, you guys are good. Pie chart? I hate pie charts. But that's a long story. Okay, show it in action. Simplify the graph. All right, great stuff. All right, you guys are smart. So let's think about let's think about this from the eye path phenomenon. Okay, so it's going to look something like this, right? And let me sort of take us through this. So a person comes in, if they're in a culture that reads left to right, the first thing they might look at is this. Oh, what is this? Oh, what is this? Oh, I have to go over here and look at it. Oh, okay, extra regime. Okay. And oh, I see over here that this is like twice as much. Oh, that's amazing. What is that? Oh, retrieval practice. Oh, what does that compare to? Oh, over here. So you can see people have to parse this. Very difficult. We're making it difficult for people to improve this, right? Or to make sense of it. So how can we improve it? So these legends never should have these. These are a bad idea. In the boot camp, I call these fleas. Fleas we don't like. Okay, we got to get rid of them. So one thing we could do is do this, right? All right, put the labels right on the content, or some of you mentioned right over the content. That's right over the graph, over the bars. That's great. But what could be better? What would make this even better? I know you want to get rid of the blue at the bottom and the top. That's fine. Maybe different colors, some shading, one slide per bar. I don't know about that because I want to compare them, right? I want people to see that. I want to tell a story that there is some comparison there, some motion. Federico, you put motion in caps. So some loud motion. Let's do it. Yeah. Reverse the bars. Okay, so here's what I think is the one main thing missing from this. And that is to show these elements one at a time so I can tell a story. Okay, everybody, if I provide people with extra view, this is what we get, we found in the experiment. If we then add retrieval practice, you can see that creates like people remember twice as much. Isn't that amazing? And that's even with no feedback, showing the power of retrieval practice. And of course, if you add feedback, you get even better results. So we can tell a story. It helps us tell a story, but also it helps us to guide their attention to the most important aspects of this, the thing we're trying to get across. Okay, so I'm going to demonstrate teaching something in 3 ways. All right, so here goes. One of the most important things we need to know about as learning professionals is the learning and forgetting curves. Now, people can go up a learning curve, but then they may slide down a forgetting curve right afterwards. And people forget a lot, but that's not the only likely thing that can happen. Also, people could forget a little bit. They can also continue to learn afterwards. And what's really important to remember is that these impacts, these after training, after learning impacts are really caused by 2 things, the design of the learning and the after learning follow through. Okay, so that's method number 1. All right, now we'll go on to method number 2. All right, let me share with you the learning and forgetting curves. And as you can see in this graph, we've got a learning curve. I could have drawn one that is more steep, less steep. And we have many after learning effects here. We have very steep forgetting curves, ones that are less steep, the ones that are better, continued learning. And really it depends on 2 things, the design of the learning and the after learning follow through. Okay, so that was method number 2, now method number 3. All right, so learning and forgetting curves, very important. Let me diagram this out a bit. This is during learning, and this is after learning. And this is more remembering, and this is less remembering. So more remembering, this is good. This is a good result. Less remembering, that's a bad result. We have a learning curve and forgetting curve. Let me show you how we take our learners, a typical trip through this learning journey. Our learners start there. They slide down the forgetting curve, though. And a question we could ask is, have we maximized the learning benefits? Well, let's look at that. They're starting here, and they're ending up here. We have not done very much with that. Now, of course, this is a little bit more complicated. I drew a very steep forgetting curve, but and I drew sort of a mid-level learning curve. I could have driven one that's more steep, so people are learning more quickly or more slow. But there's many on-the-job forgetting curves. Yes, people tend to forget a lot quickly, but we can do things to minimize that forgetting curve. We can do things during learning and after learning to minimize that. Now, ideally, what we hope to do is to do things during learning and after learning that support people in learning later. And just to reemphasize, there's two things that really support the after learning results: the design of the learning and the after learning follow-up. Okay. So I showed you 3 methods, and I want to point out a couple of things, just 2 things. One is that visuals can really help support our learners in understanding things and comprehending things. And number 2, if we're going to use visuals, particularly complex visuals, we want to animate things one at a time. We want to guide people so they can pay attention in a way that supports their learning. All right. So let's sort of summarize what we've come through. We've had 3 problems we talked about. One is bullet points elicit boredom and pain. People scan distractions. And all objects and words grab attention. And so the solution to this, you could call it the presentation science solution, is number 1, we want to maximize our slide geography, not clutter it up with things that are not important. We want to balance for aesthetics and credibility. You might think that we should just have no distracting elements, and some of the research even suggests that, but the research is limited in the fact that they use very short time intervals, and they have not measured things like credibility and belief and persuasion. So it's my belief that decorative graphics are fine, but we need to use them in a way that's smart. So here I put them toward the edge. I've had them fade out. They're not grabbing as much attention. Also, because I am animating things one at a time, they're less distracting. So we want to balance that. We want to limit the objects and words on any slide, and we want to maximize the white space so that the slide elements pop out, so that they're more salient. We want to fix the bullet point problem. So disguise our bullets as objects assigned for review and slide those bullet points. And then finally, we want to show objects one at a time. Now, obviously, doing these things actually will have profound improvements, but they're not the only thing. So let's keep going. By the way, hold your questions till the end, and I will answer any of those. And I think I can stay later, even if we go over time. So number 1, one of the messages I've been saying is we want to guide people's attention. We want to show one object at a time. So if we are in a room doing this, we really need to have one of these babies. You want to search for this online. They call them wireless presenters. It's sort of a clunky name, but very important. You don't want to be hovering over your laptop. You certainly don't want to be telling somebody to push your slides forward. It doesn't work that well, number 1, and you'll look arrogant. Let me go back. Now, if you're presenting online, what do you have that's similar to this? Well, you have your mouse, right? And your mouse and your animations to help guide people's attention, one object at a time. All right, given all this, what could be better than this? What do you think? We can use the chat. If you like something, you can share that too. Okay, bigger fonts, tacos. Oh, we could have actual tacos. Maybe 1 slide per food. Well, yeah, although remember, comparison is something really important to help people comprehend. And so if you can have comparisons that are visual, side by side, really important. maybe an infographic style. Okay, you guys have lots of great ideas. I know some of these ideas I am not capable of creating. Maybe you can. Go for it. Oh, stack foods on the chart. Oh, that's nice. I like that. All right, so you guys have come up with some great ideas. Let me show you what I might do with this. I don't think the colors really add anything. If you want to tell a story, or really one of the stories is moving from year to year. So another thing we might do is sort of, highlight the story. Okay, everybody, we're in 2020 right now, but what are the trends? What have we seen so far in our main 3 food items? We can see with burgers that the trajectory is going down. We're selling fewer burgers every year, but still we're pretty high there. And particularly compared to hot dogs, they're not changing that much, but they're sort of a low item. And tacos are getting better and better. And because of this, we need to do X. Okay, so don't be afraid to annotate right on top of your graphics and to use all the other methods you guys like. Now, some of you like the colors. Okay, well, we can have disagreements about that. I am not a graphic designer, but I did not find the colors work for me to tell that story. All right, so just some things to think about there. Here's a question we often get asked. What's more effective, a typical e-learning program or a typical classroom training program? Well, let me share the research on this. I want to begin to think about specifically teaching online now. So one of us, e-learning is a way to teach online. But here in a nutshell are the research findings. When learning methods are held constant, there's no difference between e-learning and classroom learning. So for example, if I use an animation in the classroom and an animation online, or I use a video online and in the classroom, or I lecture online in the classroom, if I use the same learning method, there's going to be no difference. But if you just tell people to create the best you can, when methods are not held constant, research finds that e-learning tends to outperform classroom training. And I share this with you because I know a lot of us are still like, oh, no, online is not as good, can never be as good. Well, that's true in some sense, but when we sort of go and look in the wild, we go to see what's actually out there, e-learning tends to outperform. But here's a big, big caveat. Both classroom instruction and e-learning can be made much, 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 much more effective when better learning methods are used. Okay, so don't think that you're guaranteed to get good results if you use e-learning. And if you want to look at this actual research review, you can go here. And just let you read this. This is one of the problems with classrooms. We tend to default to what we've always done, and that is lecture. Okay, so we're teaching online. And in some sense, we are engaging over a chasm. I'll bet you most of you remember the first time you did a webinar or taught online. Wasn't it weird that you couldn't see the learners? Yeah, they're there, but we can't see them. And so that causes some problems, right? We don't get the same reaction. We're not knowing how they're feeling. We can't see it in their eyes. They're not seeing our reaction. They're not bonding with us as much. So what can we do to overcome this issue? Well, some things. Number one, first do our homework. If we can figure out who our audience is in advance, we should do that. Learn about them. More times we give a training, the more we learn about our learners, but we should be going and learning what their work is like, what they think, what they feel, etc., before we even get presenting. But then we can do things like polling or chat, or even give assignments. We can give a short assignment. I'm not giving you any assignments today, but we can have give people a file, a one-pager. They read it. It's a little case study. They talk. We can maybe put them in breakout rooms. Can't probably be too long of an assignment, at least for short online things, but we can do that. We can engage people in discussions. We can ask people questions. It's one of my favorite things to do, as you can probably tell. And we can prompt questions from the audience. What questions do you have? The other thing, when we think about how to maintain our credibility and charisma, when we present in front of people, we know how to, as we become more experienced, we know how to project, we know how to show confidence, etc. But how do we do that online? As you can tell, probably there's things that I still need to learn about this. But here's a couple things. Avoid being backlit. Whether it's windows or a light, you want people to be able to see your face, and light it up. Put some light on yourself. If you have glasses like I do, you're going to have to put the light at an angle so you're not getting that glare effect. Here's another thing. So this is my monitor. Then notice here, I've got my webcam here. And every once in a while, if I know kind of the question I'm going to be asked, I can put notes up near that webcam so that I'm looking at them, that I'm within that angle. So it looks like I'm giving virtual eye contact to people. Very important. We want to bond with the audience. We want them to know that we are here. If we are focusing down here, not as good. If we're focusing down here, not as good. I'll give you an example of this. So here, I'm looking at you right now, but if I look down here, it just feels more of a disconnect, or if I look over here, or if I look down here. Okay, also in our meetings, sometimes we have a bunch of people sitting there. If we have them over on the left side, that's not as good. We ought to move them near the camera so we have virtual eye contact. Okay, question for you. Sally is an expert in sustainable farming and makes her living teaching workshops and doing some university teaching. Recently, she, like all the rest of us, has been compelled to move all her teaching online. After several sessions, she feels she has achieved some comfort and success. Her biggest lesson learned is that the quality of the audio is more important than the visual quality of her slides. So, Sally builds her next session on this lesson learned. Will her learners be helped or hurt? So you have to sort of assess whether Sally's principle is a good one. And your choices are, and we'll do this in the chat, helped because audio is more important than the quality of visual elements, hurt because the visual elements are more important than the audio quality of her session, or another answer would be better. And we'll just give you a minute to think about this. Okay, if another answer would be better, what is that other answer? Okay, thank you. Oh, somebody really likes A. By the way, can you hear my Jeopardy music? Just out of curiosity.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
Thank you. All right, just we're having fun. All right, so here's the thing. Audio quality is more important than you may think. It really, you don't want to play these off each other. Production values from the visual standpoint are important, but audio is really important. So what can we do for that? Well, get yourself a high quality microphone. You notice this woman here, she's got her headset on and really good quality microphone probably. I use a lavalier because I find that the big headphones make me look goofy, and I'm trying to maintain my charisma. You can get a good lavalier. This is the one I use. It's only 20 bucks. I know it's not as good as a really good high quality microphone. I do a podcast. My podcast partner has a $400 microphone. You can go there as well. Make sure you mute participants. Have a fast internet connection. If you can be wired up as opposed to Wi-Fi, much better. And here's a trick that we don't think about so often, but your computer, the programs on your computer are communicating. with the internet. So your Microsoft Word, your OneDrive, your web browser, everything's connecting to the internet all the time. So you want to close down as much as possible. And find a quiet place. And maybe one of the most important things we don't think about is practice, 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 so that we are comfortable, so that we are confident, that our voice is resonating, etc. And yeah, game changer from Christine. It doesn't cost that much to get a good microphone. All right, so question for you. And I'm gonna give you a poll question for it. Well, maybe we didn't have much success. Maybe if we practice, maybe we'll be good at it. We'll try it. So here's the question. I'm teaching this content here, and I decide to let people see my picture. All right. So I add the picture, and you can see that picture. Now, hopefully I have the writing better than this, so the bright light is not, causing glare off the top of my head there. But let me add that picture. What's going to happen? Will learners like and learn more if I add that picture versus not having the picture? Will they like more and learn less? Will they like it less to add this picture or learn more? And don't say it depends on who the picture is, okay? Because I take that personally. Or do they like it and learn less? What do you think? And let's see if we can add that poll. Yay, beautiful. Okay, so take a vote. What do you think it is? This is an option for many of us. So is this a good thing to do or not? And feel free to comment in the chat about why this might be so. Roz says, I think it distracts from the slide info. Yeah, adding cognitive load. But do people like it, or do they not like it? Not relevant to the content. How if you were wearing a hot dog contest shirt, maybe it would help. Yeah, I often have these little toys and things that I show around. That's really distracting. Or this is my new favorite one. I don't know if you probably can't see this, but okay. Will Thalheimer for president 2020. All right, so the correct answer is B. People like it more and learn less. Have we shared the poll result? Yes, we have. Okay. So our answers were all over the place. So we don't, as a field, we don't necessarily have the intuitions about this. We tend to think our most popular choice here is learners like it and learn more, but that is not the case according to the research that I've seen. The research is a little bit tentative because it's pretty new, but something to be aware about. All right, and here's the situation. This is the content, and this is a bad thing, but it's also a good thing, right? So it's a distraction, right? And we know people's eyes, the eye path phenomenon, people's eyes go all over the place, but it's also creating connection. Now, is there a solution to this problem? So my solution, which I've tried to implement here a little bit, and I don't know what you can see of me over on the right, is to, I have this little thing on my webcam that allows me to shut the sound down. So my picture's there, but it's not distracting. You can use a tissue. You can just put it over your webcam, if you don't have a fancy $2 cover, that can work. But be aware. And so then basically you're presenting in parallel, or you're not presenting in parallel. Parallel's bad because it's distracting, but you're still getting enough face time so that you're bonding with the audience, but you're not interrupting the content. Now, sometimes it's fine, and you're never going to remember to do this always at the right time. All right, what other visual distractions might we want to avoid? And usually when I ask this question, people put We got to mute the attendees, the cat, and that kind of thing. But I'm asking for what kind of visual distraction should we also avoid? Richard asked a great question. Isn't that a user call? It can be a user call, but one thing we know about learners is they don't always make the right decisions for themselves. So if I shut down my webcam, I am not making it their call. Okay, so backdrop, busy backgrounds, overbright, fidgeting. You might not like me standing up here because I move around. Clashing color schemes, emails, Skype pop-ups. Yeah, that's always a good one. Yeah, okay, so also logos, branding elements. I know our marketing departments are telling us to have these on all our slides, but why not put them on the first slide and the last slide and be done with it? Wild colors, crazy animations, the slide templates. And then we've got some, clip art. Now, some clip art is really good now, so I'm not saying not to use any of it. Some of it looks really low production values. Photos can be distracting. I put an asterisk by it because, they're sort of a double-edged sword. They do grab attention, but they also can add that credibility element, realism. Some of you commented that you don't like stock photos as much. You like more real people in there. I completely agree when you can find them, particularly if they're folks in your business. That's great. All right. So, LRA. So we've talked about a bunch of things. We've solved some problems. Clearly, we haven't solved everything. I'm just going to give you just going to run through this. I'm not even going to talk. But here's some other things we might want to think about. Some other problems we need to solve. We didn't really talk much about remembering, although I did use remembering the learning and forgetting curves as an example. But really important stuff. Hey, Ray, I did everything I could to get a meaningful thing, but sometimes the content, you can't let the marketing drive the content. All right, so look, we can't go into these things, but what I am going to provide for you is the presenter's performance tool. And you can find that here. It's a job aid. It's really ridiculous. It's like over 100 of the learning items from the presentation science workshop. It's free. I don't even ask you for your email address. You can just go get it there. I will put as we finish up, I'll put the email address in the chat. All right, I talked about a lot of things today. And one thing we know is that retrieval practice is good. And so if you try to remember what for you were the most important takeaways from the things I've talked about today. And you can put those in the chat so other people can see those as well. Of the things I talked about today, what were the most important things? The things you want to now integrate into your presentations, into your training. Notes by the webcam. Yeah, isn't that cool? Objects, not bullet points. Eye contact. Use of white space. Awesome. You want to use awesome. You should use awesome. You've got it. Yeah. White space, no templates. Objects, not bullets. Time to buy a new webcam and mic. Yeah, absolutely. Get a good webcam if you can find one. The whole world needs a new webcam, right? Okay, awesome. Great. You guys can keep putting those in there. I just want to move us to your opportunity to ask questions. And I am going to turn this, I think we'll go into that. Nadia, I'm going to turn it over to you and you can tell me what to show.
Great. Thank you so much, Will. Wow, we've covered a lot in this 55 minutes. So we've got about 5 minutes left. And yes, as Will said, please do put any comments you have in the chat, and we will aim to run the session on. We will finish at 4 o'clock, but we'll leave the chat open if Will's okay with that for another 5 or so minutes afterwards to pick anything up. I just wanted to say I have not seen such a collaborative and on-fire chat on a webinar for a long time. And in these times of COVID, where we are all glued to our screens, Will, to have everyone captivated and supporting and helping each other. You were doing the presenting, so you probably haven't been able to pick up on it as much as I have, but people are really reaching out and helping each other. And really, these opportunities, these online communities, these webinars, this is what we all come for. We come to help and support each other, and it's been great to see that. Can you just move on to the next slide, Will?
Sure.
That would be great. A couple of things I just wanted to close with, and that was that we have a new learner intelligence report coming out calling Addressing the Disconnect Between Strategy and Practice. It's heavily focused on learners, which, considering what we've covered today, should be of interest to people here. We will obviously be making this report available to everybody. Look out for that. The final thing I wanted to talk to you about is, as an organisation which is led by evidence, we do recommend and really encourage you to take our Learning Health Check. And our Learning Health Check is a benchmarking diagnostic that allows you to measure learning maturity and the impact of your learning investments. It's completely anonymous and free to use. Please do that. It's a massively powerful tool at a time when evidence is critical to how we are making our investments. So those are the two things that I wanted to talk about. The report that we have coming out is really looking at the learner voice. It's really looking at how organizations need to tap into that learner sentiment and understand what their learners are doing, how they're learning, both within the organization and outside of the corporate organization space as well. And I think today's webinar is a fantastic example of how we learn. We learn best by talking to each other, collaborating with each other, engaging with each other. And Will, your model, the engage piece was so powerful and so strong. And being able to come away with those really practical tips, I can see how you take that science piece and make it really accessible for everybody. So thank you so much from myself personally, from Emerald Works, for giving us your time today and making this such an enjoyable occasion. Thank you.
Thank you, Nadia. I really appreciate the invite.
Brilliant.
And all the help behind the scenes too.
Yes. And I've had a lot of people asking us, are we going to get the slides? Are we going to get the recording? You are. There was a bit of bandwidth issue here and there, but with so many of us on this webinar, you can understand that is the case, and obviously where you're dialing in from, but we will make all of that available for you. We'll leave the chat on for another 5 minutes, and please do share your views, share your thoughts, and we look forward to seeing you at our next expert webinar series. So look out for those. We plan to run a couple more before the end of the year and a full calendar in 2021. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Nadia. Now I'll hang out if anybody has any questions. If you put the questions in the Q&A, I'm more likely to see them because there's too many chat comments. So
yes, there is a panel. There is a panel underneath that you can click on, which will allow you to put the questions in a Q&A. Yes, you're right, Will. That's a good suggestion. The chat is still on fire.
Well, I just see a question in the chat. Brianna asks, in several large organizations I work with, we're required to use the approved templates, and leaders frown on using these methods other than bullets. How do you recommend getting others to jump on the improvement bandwagon? Well, without hiring me to make a very persuasive presentation, I think, we need to be educators. We need to be, we need to be exemplars. And so, start to use other things, sneak them in where you can. Now, sometimes, you got to do what you got to do. So you try to limit the damage. Okay. So one thing to do is to shrink things down, put them on the edges. People will habituate to things after a while. You can also, one of the things you can do is to put borders, sort of obvious visual borders between the distracting elements in your content. Like now we tend to use this 16:9 display. So you could have all the distracting stuff maybe over on the right. If you're in a language that goes left to right, you could put it all down at the bottom, and you can have like a big bar there or something that hides them, so they're not, so people know not to even look there after a while. But again, it's usually a matter of what we always have to do in L&D. We have to continually over time educate, experiment, encourage, and show some research. And I'd be glad, get in touch with me. I can share some of the research on some of this stuff. Somebody asked about music. Eileen asked about music on a presentation. Is it a distractor? It is a distractor, but at the same time, used judiciously, it can add value. I was at a funeral service on Zoom over the weekend, and music was used. We had some music based on YouTube. We also had somebody sing live, sing Amazing Grace. It was amazing. It was really resonated. So, you and I are probably not going to have that kind of an effect in our training unless we're doing something, really impactful or emotional, but you can use it, just do it judiciously. Tell us a bit more about the train the trainer you mentioned. Well, it is the Presentation Science Bootcamp, but it's specifically designed for trainers or instructional designers. It is starting in December. It is a 2-week experience, very intensive. It's probably about 2 hours a day of your effort, and we'll get people together from all over the world who are focused on doing better training presentations. If you're not in the training field, if you're a business manager, if you're a teacher of children, if you're a professor, there's separate cohorts. You can join those as well. And you go to presentationscience.net to see all about that and sign up. My advice on backgrounds. Oh, great question. So virtual backgrounds in online presenting, they don't always work that well. So you can use them. A couple of things. They take up bandwidth. So if you have any internet connectivity problems, they can cause that. Also, it can make you look sort of fuzzy and doesn't always look that professional. You got to see how it works for you. Ask somebody who's willing to give you an honest feedback. I just use a black screen. It's a black background for video shoots or photo shoots. It works for me. Blended standing on blending standing and sitting. Yeah, well, if you're in a room and you're doing training, it's often good to get people up and around. As long as it's not a goofy, silly. It's even okay to have a goofy, silly exercise. It gets the blood flowing, gives people a little change of pace. One thing we have to do is to try to be as effective as possible, but also take care of the needs of our audience members who are there. And people need to get up and get around. They need to, burn off some anxiety. They need to connect with other people. So do all these things, but don't let it be too distracting. Percentage of white space per slide. I don't have a particular percentage, but have more rather than less. You can sort of see, with your aesthetic eye. I'm not familiar. I like Boise State Professors. I don't know that book in particular, but feedback on color usage. Well, I'm not a graphic designer, but I've seen one mistake I've seen made is people try to all use a whole bunch of different colors or bright colors. That's not good. Try to keep it subtle. Try to not have too many. Nadia, we're going to just email the slides to people at their email addresses.
Yeah. Yes, that's exactly what we'll do. We'll be emailing them to them, and the recording as well.
How to convince my colleagues who think face-to-face is better? Well, go get that research report. You give me a second, I'll give you the URL.
If you want, we can include all that also, Will, in the email that we send.
Oh, great. Well, and it will be on the slides, but
yes.
You know, somebody may go to their spam or something. So this is the research report there. And it basically is a comparison of classroom versus e-learning. And it's very good, if I must say so myself. Do I recommend using infographics? And what is the best font size? Infographics can be valuable. I've created a couple of infographics. But remember, it takes time for people to parse them. They have to be well done. You have to make sure that the content on there is really real and valid. I've seen people just look for some quote unquote evidence that may not be really real or accurate, and they put stuff in there. There's a real danger in there. In my boot camp, I call that crap data because it has you have some reputational harm if you're seen as the kind of person who's just going to go on the internet and grab evidence that's not really valid. So you're going to be careful of that. And what the best font size? Well, so different font faces have different sizes. So I can't just tell you 20 point or more because it really depends. In general, 20, 24 point or more, but it depends on the font size. Also, sometimes it's okay to have smaller fonts if you are, you really need to get into something. So no hard and fast rules, but just use your common sense about it. Great question by Tony. How do you overcome the silence issue when you are asking a question and waiting for people to respond and still maintain engagement? That's a real double-edged sword. And you'll notice when I present a scenario question, I use those a lot because I think they're very effective. I read the slide elements. I read the text, and the research suggests that may not be a great idea if you're you're focusing on content. But if you have all dead air time, radio doesn't work if there's dead air time. Podcasts don't work if there's dead air time. If there's only audio, it doesn't work that well. So you can have a little bit of dead air time, but you don't want to have too much. You want to balance there. Now, when I'm doing those questions, it's not really content per se. It's really background information about the content, so I don't worry about that too much. And don't be afraid of silence in some sense, even in a classroom. If you ask a question, there's a thing in the education space, they call it wait time. And the idea is you ask a question, you don't want to call on the first person that raises their hand. And why don't you want to do that? Because you want to give all the learners a chance to do retrieval practice and think about the question before the first person, answers the question. That's valuable for learning. So sometimes this silence is good, and we can use it to our advantage. But yeah, you want to balance. That's one thing that makes all this learning stuff so great is that we have to think of all these different aspects.
Yeah.
I see Nadia's come back. She's going to kick us out. So, hey, Will, stop.
I'm just
thanks for all the
conscious.
questions. Feel free to get in touch with me. I did leave my
We
contact link.
You
So
did.
if you want to get in
You
touch.
did. You did. And thank you, Will, so much for the extra time you've given us. And, you know, again, people have found it so valuable in terms of this. And we've kept the recording on. So colleagues who had to jump off at 5 o'clock, when they get the recording, they'll get all of this extra added bonus as well. So thank you so much. We're going to officially wind down the webinar. Thank you again, Will, and hope to catch up soon with everybody. Thank you.
Thanks, Nadia. Thanks, Andy.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Carl.